If you visited Kings Island through the first couple of weekends this year, you'll notice that there are some long lines. Now, I'm not talking about for Orion, Diamondback, the Beast. I'm talking about simply to get a drink. Is it time for Kings Island to rethink the drink plans? Hello, everyone. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics drops 3 times a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So hit that subscribe button on YouTube or follow us on your favorite podcast apps.
Ryan, you and I both have the drink plan. We've had it now for, a couple of seasons, a few seasons there. For the most part, it is a good value. But when you look at the situation and how long sometimes it can take to simply get a drink at Kings Island, in part because a number of the drink locations out in the park, they're closed. Um, they also, because so many people now have the drink plan, that it just, backs up the lines for the few locations that are open. Then other people are now forced, because there aren't enough of those open, that they have to go through the restaurants, and make that line even longer just because they simply want to get a drink. Then what has to happen? So, I'm thinking it's probably time that they reevaluate this and rethink the drink plan. And coming off some visits that I've had so far this year at Dollywood, Kennywood, and what they do, um, I think it's something that Kings Island should take a look at and maybe do would become a lot more efficient. What Dollywood and Kennywood have done is they implemented a QR code based scan and pour system, for the all season and all day drink plans. It reduces, the abuse. It speeds up the service. Guests can scan a QR code on their new 2026 cups, or they get a wristband at those parks at the self-serve kiosks throughout the park for those unlimited fountain drinks. Um, I just found it to be a lot more efficient than what Kings Island is doing. It wasn't taking a good part of my, visit, to wait 20, 30 minutes simply to get a drink. I could just walk right up, scan my cup, and go. And what they do, and I think this is something that Kings Island should take a look at, and let me know, Ryan, your thoughts on this. But when you buy or renew your season pass, when they go on sale for the next season in the fall, you get, as part of that, renewal, you get a drink cup. So you're not buying a drink plan. You don't have to. It comes with renewing your pass or buying your pass for the next season if you do it by a certain date. I found that to be a really good value. So I've got the drink cups, for Dollywood. I've got one for Kennywood. So would you like to see Kings Island do something like that? So when 2027 passes go on sale, if you renew, say by, December 31st, you get a drink cup for the next season?
No. And the reason is because they'll get you two different ways that way. If you get the drink cup, well, you're not allowed to have loose articles on Mystic Timber, so you have to rent a locker.
No, there's a way around that.
What's the
way
hide
around
in the
that.
bush?
No, the way around that is, you can opt instead to get the paper cup instead of the cup, just like you could do now,
Mhm.
when you bought your plan. It's the same thing, so if you have these, set up, number one, you're not, it's going to save you on labor. So you can have all of them open
Yeah.
around the park. But if you chose the paper cup, same thing. You just go up, you grab your paper cup, you scan your season pass because it says you've got that, and then you've got your X number of seconds to pour your drink and be on your way. So it's not something that they got you both ways where you have to rent a locker. The cup is a nice souvenir item. You don't have to have that. You can get still get the paper cup, but it's in your barcode. It's on your season pass. You just scan it, grab the cup, and move on. Now I know there's going to be those that are going to say, well, now people are going to steal the cups. No, they're not. Look at Holiday World. Free unlimited soft drinks. All the cups are in the dispensers. There's no abuse there with that.
Well, no, they're free.
So yeah, but same thing. But here, you can't get, unless you have the ability to scan it, you can't get a drink. So it's not like somebody's going to take a cup and steal the drink from you. They can't do that anymore. So it's still going to be one of those things that's under control. You just, you scan, grab your cup, fill your drink, you're on your way. Next person comes in. Much faster, much more efficient than what they're doing right now. Where you have the associate has to scan you, they have to hand you the cup. The line backs up. You can only, because they don't want to staff everything, want to save a few bucks around the park, so they're going to close a lot of these drink locations. Now you can have them all open because you don't really need the staffing there. It runs itself.
Maybe I
You just have to have
misunderstood.
people come by.
Maybe I misunderstood your explanation the first one, because I thought it required the cup. I'd be fine with that. What they need to look at though is the choke points in the system. And let's start with the Coke Freestyle that actually is open occasionally, the one in Coney Mall or Action Port, wherever it is. Action Port, Adventure Port.
It doesn't really have a home. It lives in the middle. It's kind of like North and South Carolina at Carowinds.
Yeah, it's in the demilitarized zone between Adventure Port and Coney Mall. Um, so this would suggest that the pinch point is the associate scanning the pass and giving you the cup, correct? Because it's
Well,
eliminating that step.
it's not necessarily 100% that it's the fact that they don't want to staff them all and pay for an associate to do that.
Sure.
So they close them. You go up by the Eiffel Tower, it's closed. You go over, into this other area down by, the arcade and that down by the beach, it's closed. You go into Rivertown by the train, it's closed. But if it was automated, and you self scan and everything like that, they could all be open. And then now you're not going to have a big long line at the drink stand by Diamondback, because that's one of the few places open, or you're going to have to go into Action Zone and, the times that that's open, it's big line there for it, or you don't have to get in line at Coney Barbecue to try to get a drink and try to make your way through before you can get to the express lane, so I think it just makes it much more efficient. I think it would add value. I think people would be more inclined to renew if they got that free drink cup, or drink plan, whatever they chose to do. When they make that purchase, I think they would be more inclined to renew in the fall. Through December 31st, if they were going to get that included. Rather than having to do the add-on, and pay whatever the drink plan is.
Hmm.
That there's a little bit more incentive to do that. Um, but just having visited Dollywood a couple times this year, Kennywood, it is much more efficient with what they're doing with the drink plan and how to get your drinks, and you're not taking up time, valuable time at the park just waiting, to get a drink refill. Plus, if you got the cup, you get more, in your drink bottle than you would with the size that you now get. There's nobody, that I have seen abusing this, at all. So it's just something based on my experience that I thought, this would be much, much better than the way Kings Island, is handling it. So I know on the preview day, I spent an average of, 10 to 15 minutes the few times that I got a drink refill, just trying to get a drink. Only because, too, a lot of places weren't open. Now, if they had it set up like Dollywood and Kennywood, then and everything's open, it just takes me seconds to get my drink, and I'm back out in the midways heading to the next attraction or whatever that I want to ride. So I just think this is something that Kings Island should look at. Six Flags should look at. It's not necessarily a Kings Island thing, but a Six Flags thing is just a way to really, improve, the drink situation, make it more efficient. We know that you're trying to save money on associates. We see that with the number of drink locations not open, but the alcohol stands are all open around the park. We've noticed that, that right next to a closed drink stand, there's, if you want to get an alcoholic beverage, you can buy that. They'll make sure that's staffed. But the drink locations are not all staffed, and I think it's just, it's an inconvenience for guests. They paid for this product that makes it a hassle to use on a lot of days, at the park. So I'm just, thinking that, maybe it's time that, they go visit these parks, go visit Kennywood, go visit Dollywood, see how it works, and how this would really improve the guest experience at Kings Island and other Six Flags parks if you adopted what they're doing.
I'd be on board. I'm going to play devil's advocate though. Let's say they automate it, so now you can scan your season pass and get a cup, or have the cup and scan that, or whatever. Eliminates the person at the register. That's great. Do you really think that they would reallocate that labor to be maintaining these things though? Because I feel like the problem of, oh, we're out of cups, or the only thing they have is diet pib zero or whatever, that's going to be a way bigger problem, because they're going to feel like, well, we don't have to allocate labor to this stuff. At least with this, they're dedicating people to each location. I that would be my big
Yeah,
concern.
yeah, but the register people aren't the ones that are, typically refilling the drink dispensers and that.
They're not,
So
but they're
I
the
think
ones that get talked to by, I don't want to say yelled at, but
yeah,
when, hey, we're
yeah.
out of ice with everything, they're the ones that are like,
You,
hey,
you
can we
know,
get somebody
you
to fill the
still could
ice?
you could use a couple of the associates to walk around and make sure that it's everything's good. You don't have to have as many, but you could still have and especially the food. The F&B managers. They could be also walking around instead of sitting in their office all the time. They could be walking around, checking on it, making sure everything's working, or making sure that the cups are stocked, the ice is still there. So there's a lot of ways to do this better, and you know be able to save on labor, which obviously is a plan. Something that they're trying to do. Just because you see how many are closed, everyone can say, well, it's a staffing issue. They don't. It's a staffing issue because they choose not to staff it. That's the reality of the situation. They could staff these, and especially on those Fridays in April and May, you could have somebody, a full-time person or something, come out and just help out there, make sure that these are open. They don't do that. So it's something that's done by choice there.
Yeah, well, then they couldn't wander around the park and look busy. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I like any kind of efficiency that we can have. We should also,
Yeah.
and somebody's going to put this in the comments if we don't beat them to it, but there is the technology. They have it at Disney World, but it's really prevalent at IAPA. They show the software. You can have disposable cups with an RFID chip in the bottom, and it won't pour Coke unless that's valid. They have it at Universal too with the refillable cup. I don't here like
Yeah.
these cups here have an RFID chip in the bottom, and it won't fill unless it's valid. So they could invest in that technology as well. Um, I
Yeah,
don't.
but it's a pass holder. As a pass holder, wouldn't you find that that's added value for you if you get the drink cup or the drink, if you want the paper cup, that you get that as part of your renewal?
Yeah, but that's sacrificing a lot of revenue for them. I don't know if they'd be on board with that.
Mm, but are you sacrificing that revenue if you increase your renewal rate goes up and you get new pass holders because of that value that's being perceived there?
Hey,
You make that up. It's not that you're going to lose that. I mean, you'll make it up on the other, between the renewals and the new pass holders because of the perceived value.
yeah, but then all those people will be abusing their drink plan by using it 3 or 4 times a visit. They're in cahoots with the people that abuse their meal plan by using that twice a visit. Uh,
Yeah.
anyway, I think we've litigated this pretty well. Leave us a comment. Let us know your thoughts on this. What are your ideas for improving the drink plan system and speeding up the lines and so on? Um, we'll be right back with the listener questions.
All right. First listener question. It comes from Robert, Salt Lake, Utah. He says, "Hello, gentlemen. I used to buy the Platinum Pass because of all the parks being included, which morphed into the Gold with all of the park add-ons. And because of this season pass holder page, I started to buy from Canada's Wonderland due to the exchange rate. However, now due to garbage legacy Six Flags policies and living in no man's land, I will never be a season pass holder again. Any news on if the policy of home park first will go away?"
News on it going away? No, no news on that. But I will tell you that, first of all, when they first came up with the policy, I know people were calling places like Canada's Wonderland and they were sending them a link, which was widely spread out online, where you could activate the pass online. And my understanding is that let it work. And I had people over the weekend that said that they bought their pass out of Canada and they went to Knott's without activating it at all, and it worked. So it might just be the policy. I can't guarantee. Like, I don't want you to travel and then get into trouble with not being able to get into a park or something. But I um I think the problem isn't necessarily the home park first thing. The problem is they have no idea where to put their pricing. Now, I think it'll get better because they're selling all the parks that are dirt cheap. The Canada one is going to continue, but I think they're heading down the path of assuming that the parks with the park presidents are going to be the ones that are still Six Flags parks in a year. Those are all parks that should have pretty normalized prices with their season passes. So the problem may correct itself. Um, the question that everybody should be asking, and I brought this up before, is if the exchange rate is so good, then if Canada's Wonderland is this premier park that does 4 million people a year and it's got these great new rides, why are they paying less than I am as a Kings Island pass holder? Like, shouldn't they pay $300, 300 Canadian dollars? I mean, it's not like, oh, that sounds expensive to us. They're used to the Canadian dollar, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other things that has come up recently is you like to call this out, that terms and conditions are subject to change.
Mm-hmm.
And, when Platinum or Prestige went on sale in the fall, it was known that Knott's Berry Farm was the only place, unless you bought it at Knott's Berry Farm, parking wasn't going to be included. Well, now parking isn't included at Canada's Wonderland with the Prestige Pass unless you bought it at Canada's Wonderland. So there's a number of people that's going to impact. You know, I have a friend that would go there and meet up with some friends, and go multiple times a year, but now having to pay $30, $40, whatever it is, for parking, that's going to negate that. It's not going to be worth their time to go up there and meet them, after work for 4 or 5 hours if it's going to cost them, almost $10 an hour for parking, because it's no longer included with their Prestige Pass, which they thought it was at the time of purchase back in the fall. So there's little things like that are starting to get worked in. So, I would not be surprised if, we went online and saw that, the Prestige Pass was not available for parking at Cedar Point unless you bought it at Cedar Point,
Mm-hmm.
for them to drop that in. So there's just a lot of little things like that where the terms and conditions keep changing. So you mentioned like the pricing, all over the map, different places and that. So there's really a lot of work that needs to be done to kind of have a little bit more, consistency with the passes, and also with, not changing things, that will impact guests. Like now you have to pay at Canada's Wonderland where you didn't think you had to when you maybe bought the Prestige Pass in the fall. Next question
Wait.
comes
So,
from,
but I also want to
well,
point out, I'm looking at Kings Island's website, and it does not disclose that, at least openly. It just says free parking, and it has two checks, and it says preferred, and it says limited. It doesn't say not at Knott's Berry Farm or Canada. I mean, anyway, go to the next question.
no, but it does on their sites. It does on their
Oh, it
sites.
does.
It does. Yeah. So Beth, Anderson Township, where I grew up, she says, "Hi, Don and Ryan. I have two questions for you. Number one, around September or October of 2024, the diner, talking about Jukebox Diner,
Mhm.
removed the toppings bar. I completely understand this from a health and profit margin standpoint, but to my limited knowledge, I had one burger there in 2025. They've never brought back just putting on the pickles, lettuce, etc. themselves for the customer. This is super disappointing as I absolutely loved their burgers. Do you think they would ever bring back the toppings?" That's part one. Go ahead and answer that.
Ever's a long time. We've always said that. They're saving a few bucks by not including. Yeah, there was this whole like thing, and you can Google it to get the full story, but something like American Airlines would put um, one, what's the fruit that goes in a martini? I can't think of it. Olive. They put
I
one
don't
olive
know.
in a martini. They cut down from two to one, and it saved them $1 million a year. And that's probably their thought process with this. Like, if they're not throwing a pickle at you and no one's saying anything, then it's never going to affect change. So will it come back? Yes. Or is it going to come back this season? Not unless you start ruffling some feathers and, get an online sentiment going, go to guest services and tell them that you're disappointed with it. I think the bigger issue is the fact that the burgers used to be made fresh and now they're in wax bags. So,
Yes.
you can get your toppings, but you're getting a pretty like assembly line burger, you know, they're pretty good
All
though.
right.
And what,
Question number 2.
Mhm.
She says, as you guys were there for opening weekend, did you notice the car advertising the food and wine festival? I thought that was pretty neat. What are your thoughts on if they will continue to enhance the event this year if they're already advertising?
I actually happen to have a picture of what she's talking about. That's the car. This is from last year.
Mhm.
Um, and will they enhance the event? Probably. They definitely enhanced it from 2024 to 2025. So I'd hope to think that 2026 will be even bigger. It seems like they realized they had a lot to build on at the time, but um, I I think the decor looks great. We've talked about how it's not immersive and it's only in one section of the park and so on. But I think the thing that needs to be built on is if they're going to do the wine, they need to make some sort of sense to the average person. And the food was just atrocious the last couple of years, so they need to work on that.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that on an upcoming episode of Tower Topics, so stay tuned. You won't have to wait too long for that one. Alan from Goshen
Hmm.
says, hi, Don and Ryan. My family had planned on going to Kings Island today. So this is at the time of the um, message that we got, the question that we got. She said, today until we saw Jim Flugel post on Facebook that it was closed due to a private event. Going forward, do you think it would make sense for Kings Island to have these private events before opening for the season to help with training and work through potential issues before opening to the general public?
They used to, up until Diamondback, right? It used to be
Yeah.
that Cincinnati Financial, since he showed everybody behind the curtain who has it. So Sinfin has it, and that used to be on Saturday, and then opening day was Sunday. And then I think for Diamondback, they didn't want those people to get to write up for the general public, so opening day was Saturday, and then Sinfin was Sunday, and then it gets pushed around a little bit because of when Easter falls. So it was the second Sunday this year. Now, should they use that to like hammer out their problems? Absolutely not, because if those people have a bad day, they're not coming back, and that's a lot of money. They already know. They already got your money as a season pass holder. They don't care if you have a good day or not. They absolutely care if the Sinfin people have a good time. So I think that um, it would be foolish of them to try to move that earlier in the season. Now, fitting them in September, maybe I could see that, but as it stands now, I think it's a good compromise where people get preview day and opening day, and then maybe that Sunday or the second Sunday or something like that.
Yeah, I'm still surprised how many people get caught by surprise that they have this because it's been going on for years that there are these private events, whether that is in April when the park first opens or even right after Labor Day. There's still people that drive to the park, that first weekend, second weekend, expecting the park to be open, and there's private events. So in today's world that we live in, with everyone's got a phone, everyone can go online, check the calendar. There, you should not be surprised at all. There should never be a time you drive to the park and it's not open, because that information, has been out there for for a couple of months. Once Kings Island releases its calendar, they're pretty transparent at that date. It has been sold out, so it shouldn't come as a surprise. Now, in terms of training and working through potential issues and that's a whole nother topic on what they need to do there. They just don't have enough time, to where whether it's this event, a private event, or it's open to the public, that there's no way that a lot of these associates, especially in food and beverage, are going to be prepared for the onslaught of people. That all of a sudden it's lunchtime and there's a big line backed up. They're not ready for that. They don't have enough time to be prepared for that. They don't get enough training to be prepared for that. They used to.
Mhm.
They used to take that really serious, and but now it's, you get a couple of days, you go through orientation, you sit in the Kings Island Theater, they talk about a few things with you, walk you out to where your stand's going to be. Here's the register. Here's how you work it. Go. So I think that it's the associates are being put in a very difficult spot. with the lack of training that they get. So I don't blame the associates. I think it's higher up than them in terms of why, it's they're unprepared, not ready to go when the park opens. All
Yeah.
right, next
Again,
question comes from
I want to add one more point because I want to
yeah,
counter one of your points. You said like there's no excuse to not know like the park will be closed. I want to make a case for people that wouldn't know to look. It's a Sunday, parks open weekends. You would assume that they're open that day, and it is a random Sunday. And sometimes it's the 2 day, like it's past preview opening, and then they're closed the day. So, but in this case, it was the second weekend. So it's one of those you don't know what you don't know situations. So I think that the park still has a pretty big obligation to communicate that out that, hey, we're closed. I don't think that you can fault people for not checking the website because, if I want to go to, Walmart or whatever and it's noon, I'm going to assume they're open because they're always open at noon. But if it's 10 o'clock, it's like, are they open till 10 or 11 tonight? Let's go online. But I think that if people, and I think they rightly do have the logical assumption that they're going to be open weekends and Sundays included. So I can see where the miscommunication happens. You know,
yeah, yeah, but I don't think they do as good a job at the park level as they did before in terms of finding ways to make sure that that's communicated. I don't know, I don't get the connections newsletter that I signed up for. They
do they
don't
do
send
that
it
or
to me.
not? I don't get it either.
I don't know, but that's one way that it used to always be communicated was, there was an article in the connections newsletter, the park was sold out this weekend, so, it's not going to be open. The mobile app, I, have the app downloaded. Did I get any messages that the park wasn't open on Sunday, a couple days before? No, so that was an opportunity there for everyone who downloaded your app. You're asking people, you go onto their website, almost every page now says download the app, it's free, all that kind of stuff. They aren't using that to really communicate information. They'll send me stuff to buy a silver pass when I have a prestige
They
pass, but I don't get any
sure
information.
will.
I don't get any information on the park hours. Now it is on their website. You can go there and see it. It is, if you are a member of the Kings Island Facebook group or, the other, 172 groups that, Jim posts in, he does make it very clear that the park is closed. He does a great job as an ambassador for the park in terms of, communicating when the park's open, when it's closed, what the hours are and all that. But that shouldn't be Jim doing that job for them. They should be doing it themselves. They got the tools, they need to use it. So it is on their website, but they don't use the mobile app, to send out that messaging.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean,
But
well, let me make this like a tantamount thing. And this is, again, I understand the argument of like they've always had a Sunday or whatever, but it's not the same every year. So imagine if you went to like a BW3s and it's 3 o'clock and they closed at 2 on a random Tuesday. And they were like, should have looked at our website. It's like, why would I look at your website? Like you would
yeah,
normally
yeah,
be.
yeah. I get what you're saying, Ryan, but at the same time, I think that, it is on their website, it is on the app with the calendar, but at the same time, Kings Island doesn't help itself by not really communicating that and using the tool. Everyone's got the phone, right? Everyone's downloaded the app on
Mhm,
their phone.
mhm.
Everyone's got that. Everyone has the opportunity to get, those messages either through the app or, you get a text message from the park. Communication is not a hard thing, if you want to put the effort into it. So I think they just need to do a better job of letting people know when they're open, when they're not open,
Sure.
and using those tools that are available to them. All right, Jerry from Hamilton, Ohio. He said, I noticed new ride kiosks at Kings Island. Have you talked about them yet? How do they work? What are your thoughts? Thanks.
Is he talking about single use fast lane?
The key. He says I noticed new ride kiosks
That's
at
got to
Kings
be it.
Island. Yeah.
I don't know of them adding more kiosks. Maybe they have. Okay. My thought on single use fast lane. I am wholeheartedly in favor of it. And the reason for that is that single use fast lane that you buy is incredibly expensive. It's a premium experience. And if you want to drop, $15 or $20 to skip the line at Flight of Fear or whatever, and you want to give Kings Island that kind of revenue, I think you should have that option. It's when it's too cheap or whatever that it becomes a problem. I think that's a fantastic opportunity. And I think that whoever, either came up with the idea or was able to implement the technology was absolutely brilliant. And I'm really in favor. I think that, the fast lane line, you can make an argument that it makes the other line run slower, blah blah blah. Okay, that's fine. But a very small percentage of those people went to that kiosk and spent the money to get it, but enough to justify it, I bet.
Yeah, but a lot of these people that are in the fast lane line would have been in the line anyway. So I mean, I don't know. I think it just comes down to how well the ride, the operators there manage both of those lines to make sure that they're both moving.
I agree, and and I've only bought. I mean, I've got a Prestige Pass, so I get single use fast lane. But that I've purchased it once ever. I bought it for Top Thrill 2. I spent $40 freaking on it, and you know what? It saved me an hour and a half line. It gave the company $40, and it really probably didn't make a meaningful
Yeah.
difference to the people in line. So that's why I think it's a
With
good thing.
everyone though, now with everyone, that was upgraded to Prestige and you get that free single use fast lane every time you visit. I don't know when you go to Cedar Point that you're going to, save yourself an hour and a half anymore. I think that line's going to be a lot longer than it had been because of this.
I got lucky when I did it. I got on in about 10 minutes on Top Thrill 2. But I can only imagine because the ride went down and it went back up and we happened to
Yeah.
be there. But like Maverick on a normal day, the fast lane line's 45 minutes. I cannot wait to see what it's like this year. It's going to be an
Oh,
hour
I
and a half
know.
for fast lane, three and a
Yeah.
half for normal.
People have been sending me photos, showing me because of everyone being upgraded to Prestige and getting that, free single use fast lane, but just showing me how long the fast lane line has been for Phantom Theater, Opening Nightmare, for the Beast, for Diamondback, for Mystic Timbers, other rides around the park. So, um, fast lane's not always fast. Sometimes it's going to be just about the same amount of time as it would have been if you got in the regular line.
Well, yeah, but I definitely think the prestige thing as it stands now, we'll revisit this in like October because that's going to be a problem. It hasn't been as much of a problem as I kind of feared it would be, simply because you only get one of them. So you're not going to use that on like backlot stunt coaster, for example. Probably not. You're going to use it on Mystic, Diamondback, Beast, and this year you're going to use it on Phantom Theater, Opening Nightmare. You only get to choose one, and then you're done for the day. So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely longer, but I kind of feared like, oh, fast lane 45 minutes, standby 15. I definitely had that in my head. Now, my God, like in October, I remember that fast lane line for the Beast. They rerouted it now, but used to go up the exit and it went all the way past the photo booth. Totally anticipated being a situation like that, if not worse. But as it stands
Mm-hmm.
now, it's definitely worse. It's definitely devalued the product, but it's not as bad as I kind of feared it might be because of that.
Right.
All right. Um, Don, let's do our YouTube comment of the day. I just got to find it. Here we go.
I'm liking these. These have been good. It's been a good add to our show.
I know. I agree. All right. This is from Brian Neal, former Southern Ohio area region SOAR ace rep Brian Neal back in the mid 2000s. But he said, Brewhouse no longer has fish sandwiches and Coney Barbecue doesn't have burnt ends. They're removing items that people like. The prices are going up and the quality and quantity is going down, just like everything else in this world. I wouldn't have included the
Uh,
comment if he didn't say just like everything else in this world, because that made me laugh.
Brian is one of the most passionate people you're going to run into when it comes to Kings Island. Um, yeah, there's a lot of people that I've heard from that are very disappointed about the fish
Hmm.
sandwich. I think Ryan, you're one of the people that let me know that have been taken off the menu.
Because a
Coney
million
Barbecue
people
not
told
having.
me that it was taken off the menu.
Yeah, a lot of people have mentioned to me about the burnt ends at Coney Barbecue that they're disappointed about that. There's also the switch from the rotisserie chicken to the smoked chicken at Coney Barbecue. They did that switch. So, um, yeah, it's disappointing. When you start to have some of your favorites, you buy the dining plan. The expectation is that you're still going to have burnt ends and you're going to have the fish sandwich. When you renew and buy that in the fall, season opens, it's off the menu. Um, and not really replaced with anything that you could say is an adequate replacement for it. You've got some of these short term things that they're doing. You've got the hot dog that they're doing at the brew house, but it's only there for a limited time. Um, I understand Brian's disappointment here.
Yeah, I had the hot dog. Um, the hot dog.
Would you recommend somebody burning their dining plan to get that?
Uh, okay, we need to break things down here, Don. To be clear, you eat so you can live, because if you don't eat, you'll die. If you had to choose between dying and eating the hot dog, then eat the hot dog.
But there's other things to get. I mean, is that
No,
something
the
that you
hot
would
dog.
want to use your dining?
So okay,
Would you use your dining? Are you Okay, you're going to be an influencer here, and I hate that role of trying to tell people yes or no. But in this situation, because it's short term, in that, are you going to recommend somebody try that, or would you go get something that you're a little more familiar with?
yeah, okay. I want to tell you my experience with the hot dog. So first of all, the hot dog looks amazing, and on paper, it sounds amazing. And I went to the brew house, and I was with my friends, and my friend Jeff, who's Noah the field reporter's dad, had tried the hot dog, and I was like, "Oh, is it good?" And he's like, "No." And I was like, he's like, "It needs something. It's missing something." And I was like, "Well, I want to try this for myself." So I did. And I don't, okay, you take a hot dog, foot long hot dog, you put macaroni on it, you crush up Grippos and put it on top of that. I don't see where the flaw in the logic is. But for some reason, it was the most boring thing I've ever eaten in my life. And that's what he was saying too. You said it needs a sauce or something. I was like, there's no way.
Is
There's
the macaroni, and I've heard the
the
mac and
macaroni's
cheese.
terrible.
Yeah, that's what I've
It's
heard, is
terrible.
that it's kind of like tasteless, and that's part of the problem with this.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much cheese was on it. They have some sort of like green powder on it's some sort of spice or whatever. I didn't taste it. Did it taste bad? No, but it was just incredibly boring. Like for to consume that many calories and for it to be like, like that was disappointing. I'm glad that it's not like a permanent thing on the menu because I get to try again. But maybe mine wasn't made right, but that doesn't bode for the whole thing of Jeff saying that it was boring too. Um, so no, I would not. If you had to choose between that and starving to death, eat the hot dog. Other than that,
Okay,
just get the pub burger. You know?
which has, from what we've been told, that they're using a lesser quality meat for that this year,
Yeah.
and I've heard, and people have sent me pictures that there's inconsistencies. A couple people, said they loved it, tasted great. A couple other people were like, no, and they showed pictures where it was kind of like burnt and
Mhm.
shriveled up, like it was small, like they overcooked it.
Yeah.
Um, so I've seen that, and the best one was when somebody told me that they got the pub burger, except for they forgot to put the burger on it. So they brought it out, no burger on it. Then they had to wait like another 25 minutes for them to bring out a burger
Yeah.
to put on it.
I think the shriveled up burger thing, that's clearly like that's a training thing. That's a quality control thing. I don't think it's a referendum on the meat. And the reason why I'm not harping on the lower quality meat, and this is this is definitely going to sound terrible, but the cheaper the meat is, the more fatty it is, and the more fatty it is, sometimes it makes for better burgers, although it's worse
It
for
can,
you.
it can,
So,
yeah.
and I was I nobody at my table got the pub burger, but somebody had left some behind at a table that they had abandoned. I looked at it; it looked fine, but um, it's yeah, if it comes out
What
burnt or
about the
whatever,
barrel rolls? I've heard they've reduced the number of barrel rolls you get to.
I don't have a complaint about my barrels were some of the best I've had. Okay, the barrels, I can tell you what the difference is because they cook so many of them that grease gets dark and it gets bad. I mean, you worked at Chick-fil-A, you understand, like, you change the grease every once in a while. So when I don't know how often they do it, but if you get the end of the life cycle of that grease, that's when you get the burnt tasting dark ones. If you get the newer grease, that's when you get the bright orange ones. So it's all a
Right.
matter of luck. Mine were brand new. These were some of the best barrels I'd ever had. But you won't always be that lucky there.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A, that was not a fun time having to change that. We did it because it was in the guidebook, how often you were supposed to do that to maintain quality and
It's during the
maintain the
course of the
same.
day, right? They do it during
Sometimes,
the
yeah.
course of the day. Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, we had two machines, so we could do that during the day. But oftentimes though, it was done at night, both machines. and that stuff is a mess. You know, to try to,
Oh, it's awful. It's awful. And I'm
you know,
sure they've got nowadays. I mean, Chick-fil-A, when you worked there, did not do the volume that they do now. A
no, and it
friend,
wasn't the menu that they have now, not at all. I mean, it was, you know, I remember when we didn't even have the spicy chicken sandwich back then.
well, and
You
it's
know,
you're in the mall, right?
yeah,
So you did like a 50th of the customers that they do at the Mason
drive through.
Chick-fil-A or whatever, you know. But the so a friend of mine used to be a manager at Chick-fil-A, and he said that the grease is changed at least once a day. They just have enough
Yes.
fryers to be able to continue the motion. So but
Yeah,
yeah,
we were
they're
like every 2 days we had to change, but we had to have it to where, and we're getting off the target here,
yeah,
but which we
sorry
often
Jerry
do.
from
But
Hamilton.
we had to have it. You know, whenever you got your Chick-fil-A sandwich, that the look of it, you know, had to have consistency. So it couldn't have it to where you were putting it in the grease that had been in there for several days. So we had to it was quality control, and but it was a pain to do that. And you know, on those nights when I was closing, and that was something we had to change. Um, you know, it was just a mess. It just got all over everything.
And how were you, like, what, a teenager, or were you in your 20s when you worked there?
No, I was 20, I think.
Okay,
19, no, 19, 19. So 1980,
so
19.
it causes so much acne and stuff too when you're that age and you're messing with that grease and stuff because
Yeah, but it would drip down, like it would get on the edge, you know, off to the sides and that
yeah,
when you're taking it out, and then it would kind of like go behind it. So you'd have to pull the machines out, and then you'd have to like mop the floor
degrease it.
behind it, and it was
Yeah.
just, I mean, it was just a mess. But every single one of us that worked there, you know, wanted to make sure that, you know, the quality was good, and that everything, you know, the next morning, whoever came in to open, that the place was spotless.
Yeah. You know what's not super greasy? Our members. I want to give a big shout
Oh,
out
they're
to.
not.
They're not at all. Let's give a shout out to Miss Mandy, 1983, Lil Mac, 21, Brian Hauser, 330T, Aaron Bort, Jacob Fix, Damon Barnes, Dakota Cole, Eric Grau, Gibson Hills, Connor Wheeler, Dustin Jackson, Songstress Miku, Medic 302, Eastern Coaster, Guys and Girls, Justin Y, Mike Garrett, Galaxy B-Boy, Greggy Rocks, K La La, T Cleveland, Tim Dwelly, Sun Fun Sarah, Ian Ross. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the prestige level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to the videos, exclusive content, exclusive live streams, and some tiers even get a free t-shirt. And if you have not sent your information, for the love of God, hosts at towertopics.com, HOSTS at towertopics.com, your name, the username I just read off, your t-shirt size, and your shipping address. That would be the most incredible thing you can do. My birthday's not till January, but if you haven't gotten me anything, or if this is for my 2026 birthday, what you can do is send me that information just so I can send you a t-shirt that you earned.
Yes,
Even
you've earned that T-shirt. Yes, I saw a couple of those at the park on preview day, season
the
event
members
preview day.
t-shirts.
I did the ones that we did way back.
Did who is, well, you don't have to say their name if you don't want to dox them, but I saw you sent me a picture of you with somebody with the I hate tower. Oh no, the person you sent me the you were with the I hate Tower Topics t-shirt.
Yeah,
One of my friends didn't know we sold that. I think they saw the same guy and they came in. They're like, "You're not going to believe what I just saw."
I was getting ready to ride the train, so I was waiting for it to come back into the station because they were only running one train. So I wanted to get you know, a couple of photos of it coming around the corner, you know, before it headed back into the station there. So I see a guy walking down the steps after riding Mystic Timbers, and then he looks and he says, "Hey Don, how you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, nice shirt." And he goes, "No, I don't hate Tower Topics. I just like the."
Well,
And I
you
said, "Can I
bought
get
it
a?"
from us. We ate
And I
Tower
was,
Topics.
I was like, "Can I get a photo with you?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." You know, and I sent it to you right away. But yeah, that's another thing we have that you know, a merchandise store, all kinds of different designs. Another way to support Tower Topics is to purchase a merchandise item. You know, it's now you know, not this weekend, or you know, coming off this weekend. It's not t-shirt weather necessarily, but you know, we're getting closer to summer, so a lot of great t-shirt designs, hat designs. You know, you name it, we pretty much have it on Tower Topics. There was something that we were talking about the other day, Ryan, that I said we should make that a Tower Topic shirt. And I forget what it is right now,
Well, okay,
but we should do that.
Pete Rose used to sign baseball saying, "I'm
Oh
sorry, I
yeah,
bet on baseball." Do you remember what our idea was?
something along the lines like
Dear Kings Island, I'm sorry we spoke up. Signed Tower
Oh
Topics.
yeah, yeah. I'm sorry we spoke up about the park tower topic, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I'll come
yeah.
up with something using those graphics.
We're not sorry we spoke up though.
Not until we're indicted, like Pete Rose. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. This
Hey,
has been fun, but no members though. I really, I do want to say that we really appreciate the support. I can tell you right now, we're not 400 episodes in without your support. So it's expensive to do this. Just go look at purchasing StreamYard. If you were interested in starting a podcast, then you can see all the costs that are associated with something like that. Um, so yeah, I mean, without your support as a member, that we're certainly not in the 400 episode range.
no. Well, and if you think about it, like if we didn't have members, let's say we just didn't make money on this podcast, like it would be tough. I mean, we bankrolled StreamYard, I think, before we were making any money on the podcast. Now, I'm not saying making money as in this is our income, but basically the money that goes into this podcast.
Hey, I'm using Tower Topics. What we've made from these episodes. I'm taking a Disney cruise with that.
Cool. But a lot of the money that we get from the podcast goes right back into it. It doesn't come
It
in and
does.
go out at the same time, so it's hard to think of it that way because we get hood rich for a while when we get paid for this stuff. But we would probably, I mean, you saw the old attractions group stuff where it looks like the graphics were made in Microsoft Paint and stuff. We just have nicer stuff now,
A
and
lot
we're
nicer
able to
stuff that we can do. Exactly.
so we're able to produce a better product, and it's mainly because some of you guys, and if you can't, like that's cool. Like, if you're watching, especially we're about 46 minutes in now, and we've been talking about nonsense for the past 15. If you're still with us, like you're supporting us
That makes it
wholeheartedly.
genuine and authentic when we just go on these different, tirades about different things. Um, we get off track about, I would say, probably 6 or 7 of every 10 episodes. Something comes up where we go a different direction, and it's not what we were thinking about talking about when we signed on and said go, and you pushed a button to record. But just a lot of fun, and again, we really appreciate all our members, and I know a number of them come up to us in the park and you know let us know that they're a member and they appreciate the show and all that. But I think as much as you appreciate Tower Topics, we appreciate you more.
Mhm. All right, I'm Ryan. That's Don. This is Tower Topics.